The ascendant in astrology. So the ascendant, or the rising sign, is the sign that is crossing over the Eastern Hemisphere, the moment of birth. And in traditional astrology, the Greek name horoscopos, which means hour marker, actually comes from this whole idea of what an ascendant is. And they believe the ascendant to be a very personalized component of the chart,
Yeah.
because it's so dependent on your and unique to your birth time. Even more so than the moon, because the moon will perhaps stay in a sign for 12 hours, a good chunk of the day, a couple days even. And it's just not the case with the ascendant. It's a lot more personalized, and it is your unique kind of expression or motivation of how you fulfill your destiny. And in traditional astrology, they call it the first house, the helm of the ship, and being how your life force is essentially like driven to its destiny through this first house and what was on the rise when you were born. And the lord or ruler of that first house sign, looking at how it's placed in your chart, if it's in a house it likes to be in, if it's aspected well, kind of determines the condition of your steersman, or the person who's navigating the boat of your life. So these are just some of the traditional ideas about what the ascendant is. And it's worth mentioning too that the ascendant also connects, or first house specifically connects to our physical form and how we look. And so there's good medical astrologers like Judith Hill who actually talk about the astrological body types or morphologies. And a lot really plays into what your rising sign is, believe it or not.
There's so much I want to add to that, in the sense of how you put it. The ascendant is how I see it when I see a chart. As I see the child, I see where you begin in life. Molly was talking about how it relates to your destiny, kind of where you begin in this specific lifetime. And if you think about the north and south node in terms of the shape, the south node is a horseshoe that looks like a U, and then we have a north node which looks more like a upside down U. So together it creates a circle. So think about the journey of life beginning in the middle of the circle, let's say on would be your left as you're looking at the screen. And so we begin our journey going into the unconscious, into the underworld, in the sense as being children, being thrown into this world. And so we gradually experience our south node, where we're coming from first, because we just came back into the life stream. We just came back from another incarnation. We're still acting as if we're in this past life, in a sense. So as we go through our experience, we complete the half circle of the south node. And then as we reach the point of maybe 40 years old, the half life, that would be like the half cycle of Uranus. As we go further around the circle, we start to experience a north node, our north node destiny. And the analogy is that wherever our ascendant is where we're beginning in this lifetime. So those attributes, those that we recognize through our physical body, what we look like, how we came in, as well as our personality traits and how we deal with things, those begin the exploration. And then as we come from that space, we develop more our sun. And so the sun of our chart begins to shine more. And that would happen maybe half circle through the life as we journey through the entire circle.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've heard too that the ascendant can be what kind of motivates how we direct our life, or in terms of what is the motivating factor of how we're leading our lives. So child's interesting, but I like to think it's not just a chronological beginning of life. It's something I think we really do carry throughout. For instance, planets on the ascendant or conjunct the ascendant are going to definitely flavor how a person expresses themselves or really comes across. My brother, for instance, he has Mars. One of my brothers has Mars on the ascendant, and I've met a lot of people with Mars on the ascendant, and it's like you notice, you definitely notice. You can feel it. You can like feel the martial energy coming off them. Um, I think also about just the elements of the ascendant. So, for instance, people with like an earth-based ascendant are kind of motivated most in this life by this need for material security, whereas someone with a water ascendant is really motivated by the need for emotional security. Someone with fire ascendant is really motivated by this need to have their own freedom of action, and then someone with a air ascendant is really motivated by the ability to like communicate their ideas out into the world. So in Vedic astrology, they call the ascendant the Lagna, and in Western, it is seen as very important, especially I think in terms of like synastry and composite. I feel like it is really important that there is like communications within the ascendants. I know in Vedic they do emphasize the moon and the ascendant within a composite reading, especially like marriage readings, to make sure that they are harmonious, or at least.
Isn't the ascendant usually the day-to-day experience in a synastry chart? Like how two may respond to each other in the everyday, like everyday life. Can they actually live out a life together? Can they, you know what I mean? Can they get along? Do the ascendants get along? Right? That I remember that from a while back, studying that. To add to that, I want to go back a little and just touch on when you see a planet conjunct the ascendant. Let's say that you had a Sagittarius ascendant, but you had the moon conjuncting your ascendant. So the moon is not the ruler of Sag, that would be Jupiter. And so initially we'd look at where Jupiter is in the chart as the ruler of Sagittarius. But let's say the moon was 2 degrees behind the ascendant or in front of the ascendant, or anywhere within maybe 4 to 5 degrees either side. I would almost venture to say, as I've studied that, we would say the moon is the ruler of the chart and not Jupiter. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Like if you or someone you know has a planet that's almost exactly on the ascendant or within maybe 4 or 5 degrees either direction, probably more degrees in front of the ascendant, then you want to look at that planet as well. If not,
it like overrides
it. If not as an override, as a complete override of what the usual ruler would be.
Yeah, that is interesting. And in traditional astrology, they look at the lord or ruler of the ascendant, usually using whole sign system, the location of that planet. So say, I'm a Pisces rising, the traditional ruler is Jupiter. So looking at what house Jupiter is in, for the example of my chart, tells you a lot about how the ease at which that person can kind of perhaps like orient their life. And it's believed that when it's in the 6th, 8th, or 12th, it's a more challenging ride or a bumpier
we're talking about
boat
that.
ride. Maybe you have like a drunk steersman or whatever. And in medical too, Judith Hill talks about how, when the ruler of the ascendant's in the 6th, 8th, 12th, it's like you got to pay extra care to your health because you're more susceptible. And water and I know water, it might be air too, are the most delicate in terms of being influenced as an ascendant, because the ascendant plays a role in like how the outer environments like interacts with you. So when you have a water rising, for instance, I do, you actually are more impressionable to the surroundings of your environment. So
and I get that from you. You're very sensitive to the sound and the noises in the environment, and even the type of music. And I'll touch upon that. I want to do kind of a breakdown of each ascendant, or at least just a snippet, just a little photo of each.
I encourage you to do that.
And what else did I want to add to that? So the ascendant is really important. I mean, it's how you protect yourself. It's the skin, they say, right? It's how the world sees you, or you see the world before you really get to know someone. It's kind of like the first thing you see or
The
recognize.
mask. They call it the mask.
Yeah, that's
too.
right. Yeah, the mask you wear.
I don't like masks because mask. Well, I guess we all wear masks, so. But a mask does imply you're like hiding something.
Shakespeare said we're all actors on the stage. What's that famous quote he has? It's such a great reveal. It's almost like a whistleblower kind of phrase. Something to the extent as we're all actors. It didn't start that way though. I'll remember the quote later maybe. I wanted to add that, or ask rather, if the ascendant then is, no, let me just go through the ascendants now because I don't remember what else I was going to say to that. So Molly was talking about the elements of each ascendant. So I think I'll do it in that categorical way. So I'll start with the water ascendants because she brought it up. Because the water ascendants are so, just like water, so sensitive to the environment around it, and can absorb what's in its environment. It's very sensitive, and it almost needs to stabilize or with its environment completely. Too much noise or too much energy is overwhelming to it because it can't help but almost become it, being water. And what I've noticed with the water ascendants is they're very attuned to vibration. So they're very attuned to music. And so just like water will seek its own level, will have a certain vibration to it, so will music have its own way that it can flow. A lot of musicians I see with water ascendants, especially Pisces ascendant. I see a lot of musicians. Cancer is going to be ruled by the moon. So Cancer is an ascendant. It's going to be an ascendant that needs to do what is correct for it at any moment. So if it's too tired, it needs to sleep. If it's ready, if it's hungry, it needs to go eat. Remember, it's ruled by the moon. So it's very moody. It needs to do what it's in the mood for. Okay. With Scorpio rising, it's a very challenging ascendant. I've found. I found a lot of the childhood with the Scorpio ascendant. I've seen it's almost like they're walking on eggshells. There's always someone around that's overstepping their reality. And it can be a very traumatic upbringing, and it could be the rest of their life them learning to master it. Master it in the sense of come clear of what happened in their childhood and who was it that overstepped their boundary or attempted to control them, right? Control being ruled by Scorpio. And so the mastery of a Scorpio ascendant is very, very a big challenge. But usually it's commented that a Scorpio ascendant is going to be angel or devil. It'll go to one extreme or the other before its transformation. As we see with Scorpio energy.
One thing can I add about the water risings? A little like health tip, I guess I would give is I'm a Pisces rising, and I noticed that baths are very like salt baths at the end of the day. Energetic cleansing type rituals are very, very helpful for people with water risings, not only from like environmental pollutants or whatnot, because I myself have like very sensitive skin. I'm very sensitive. I break out very easily, if I'm in like a polluted environment. My like vibrancy and how I look is very dependent on even like my mood. Like you can literally see on my face like if I'm what my health state is. So I would say like Epsom salt baths, like bathing, things where you're like even energetically cleansing, or having rituals around energetic hygiene can be really, really beneficial for those with watery risings.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for underscoring and nuancing that. I didn't say too much about Pisces rising. I did mention a couple of things, but I think Molly added enough there. The only thing I might add to that is I have a really good buddy who's a Pisces ascendant, and he's very particular about what environments he chooses to be in. Very, very protective over himself and his energy, and in such a way where it's almost like a precise kind of sense of it's almost like a mythical sensibility of it's correct for me to be in this place at this time, or it's not correct for me, and now I'm going to leave, and now I'm going to go to this place. Very interesting, very mystical quality to Pisces ascendant.
There's, in terms of appearance, I've just gotten this a lot as a Pisces rising. I tell people a lot. People will mistake me for other people
Yeah, you told me
very
this.
frequently. The modern ruler of Pisces is Neptune. There's a kind of mystical, I guess, appearance in the sense that like people will just come up to me and be like, "I've met you before," or "Oh, you look just like so and so," or I photograph like extremely differently. Like I literally don't. I can look like 2, 3, 4, 5 different people. Like
Interesting.
there's a chameleon shape-shifting quality, perhaps to maybe all the waters, but specifically to the Pisces rising.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, you mentioned that before. Now I'm going to go into what holds water. I'm going to go directly into Earth.
Okay.
So with Earth, I'll start with the first, or Taurus rising. As a Taurus rising myself, it's really fun to reflect on how I was as a child, because it was just how I dealt with the world right away. So I always asked my parents. I would always ask my parents like what I couldn't remember in terms of like what was I like as a child. And the theme that gets the most testimony is that they could not ask me to do something that I did not want to do. So I would just give it to my Sag ascendant brother to do, and he'd be excited. Oh, I get to do this, or I get to do that.
He was excited.
He was always quick to say yes, yes, I'll do this, yes, I'll do that. But when the directions would come to me, it'd be more like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. Or manipulate my way around it if I didn't want to do it. I had battles with my dad since I was like 3 or 4. We had one of those, families, which is, common with many families who grew up during the war, was that my dad was obsessed with me finishing every morsel on my plate. Now I'm very anti that because everyone should eat the correct amount for them. And what's left over should go back to the earth, or it should be leftovers for the next day, or you could put in, whatever you want to do with it. But I speak this rather strongly because I suffered the other end of this as a child. I'm not adapting my father's kind of, place or emphasis on this, or manipulation, whatever you want to call it. But there was many times where I was eating a meal and I didn't want to finish it for whatever excuse or reason, right? I just didn't want to do it. And so my dad would say, "You're not leaving this table until you finish every," and I'll never forget, like, just maybe like 4 or 5 years back, I was visiting a neighbor who
they didn't know about composting back then.
No, composting. It's in the verbs, I was visiting a neighbor, and the neighbor, she said, "Oh, do you remember your dad used to like leave you at the table and wouldn't let you leave the table until you finished everything?" I was like, "Yeah, I remember that." And I felt so sorry for you. I wanted to do something, but there was nothing I could do. It was at a neighbor's house. That's how far it would go.
Wow.
Like I go to a neighbor's house and I wouldn't finish all the food, and my dad said, "You're not getting up till you finish it." And I wouldn't finish it because as a Taurus rising, you can't
rush. You can't rush them.
You can't rush us.
Trust me, I've learned this firsthand as your colleague.
She says that with some repression, I see. But yeah, we can't be rushed. We can't be pushed. Everything in its own time. Let the sloth move at its own pace. So let's move on. That's too much talk about the Taurus. But the next Earth would be, what's the next Earth after that? Virgo? Virgo ascendants. That's one of the ascendants that's just,
I would say, very concerning.
And because of it, presents very well. They don't
even if they're not doing well, they'll be like, "I'm fine."
Yeah,
things are great.
Yeah, a very good. They have a very good facade, very good poker face of everything's in order.
Hard to tell if something's actually like going on in them and their person. That'd be a good one to really check in on. Like, hey, no, like one-on-one, like good. How are you doing? Really, in a way where they could feel safe to be vulnerable.
It's like the projector of the astrology, because usually projectors need to be checked in.
Oh, interesting. Okay, thank you. Thanks for your check-in.
Because they're not self-aware. But everyone, so they need to ask others, or others need to tell them, "Hey, you don't look so well," or "Hey, are you sleeping okay?" Hey, with Virgo ascendant, I would say the same. um, as a Virgo, like I have a lot of Virgo ascendant friends, and they're usually very ordered, very
I
organized,
would
or
say
present as
I would
such,
say the difference though is
or
that
present as such.
the Virgo risings are very self-aware. So I
Okay,
wouldn't
okay,
necessarily make that analogy.
yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's
But they need to be checked in on because they're so self-aware that they present very, very well when it's like you wouldn't know maybe that they're not doing well. Like they would be good at perhaps hiding that.
another thing to be aware of. And with all the and I'm going to introduce modality since we did do a video on modality, is all the mutable ascendants are very sensitive to how you word things, how you explain things, how
Oh.
language is
Do you
used.
notice that with your the kids?
No, because I don't always know the time,
Okay, all right.
But with a Virgo ascendant especially, because they will interrupt you mid sentence and say, I don't understand what you're saying, because they can't process unless the words are put in the correct order for them. Maybe I'm going a little far. Maybe you hear some repressed hostility in my voice from dealing with them and their need for order. Um,
I want to ask like
you can ask me off camera.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
Is it family?
Capricorn ascendants. Let's go with Capricorn ascendants. I don't know a lot of my family's ascendants. I mean, I can psychically kind of intuit it. We can do an episode on that. Yeah, no, it's good.
Really good
to research it.
Oh, the family.
We can reload.
You gotta know your family stuff.
The ascendant.
So helpful. Everything. So useful.
Capricorn ascendant. Capricorn ascendant. Think about Saturn. Think about the need to have power. Think about the need to have a power safe place in reality, to work hard, to have what you need, to have recognition for it. Think about Saturn over a long period of time. Maybe the Capricorn ascendant starts out reality, with having a tough time, in its teens, in its 20s, and its 30s, and maybe as it grows older, is usually with how Saturn ages, very finely, like wine, in the sense of maybe it starts to look a little younger, maybe.
I have heard that with Capricorn that they lighten up. That energy actually lightens up with age because they like don't, because especially maybe with this ascendant, they have to grow up fast.
Yes.
There is this kind of like letting go or
right.
surrender as they maybe go through life's trials and tribulations.
Maybe they become more childlike.
Yeah, my dad's actually a Capricorn sun, and I've totally seen that with him. Totally so much goofier, carefree, as an elder now, who's almost retired, to when, my brothers were younger, like very stern, disciplinarian, strict. And now like he's the chill, relaxed parent.
I wonder if my dad was a Capricorn ascendant. I'll have to put that in the chart and see if it goes. Great insight there. Yeah, with Saturn, there's an ease over the years, right? There's like a lightness that you don't get in the beginning. You get too much seriousness, right, in the initial part of life.
It's good to know, I think, if you have like a Capricorn ascendant child or a Capricorn moon child, they might need to be treated more like an adult, or they might not connect maybe with peers as easily.
Good insights. We're going to move now to, let's do air. And we'll start with the first air sign that shows up is the twins, is the Janus faced.
They're probably shapeshifters too, huh? Gemini.
Oh yeah. Or
change their look a lot.
The two faces, change their ideas, change their interests. Go from one thing to the other, this interest to that interest. Ideas. A Gemini ascendant is going to be interested in this, is going to be interested in that. I don't know how deep the Gemini ascendant will go into things. Maybe that depends on the chart. But really into ideas, really great at mastering, the kind of superficial layer of things. But the chart would show whether it can go really into
Do,
depth
do
or
you think
specialization.
a Gemini ascendant would be like a more chatty type personality?
Chatty, charming, social, communicative, a lot of friends,
Like
a lot of
outspoken.
family, a lot of social endeavors, outspoken. I don't know. I'm not sure.
That's more with Mars on the ascendant. I've just dealt with that a lot. It's interesting about Mars on the ascendant. It's literally one of those astrology aspects that you can like see from a mile away. Like you just know.
I don't know any that I can think of right now.
They're the loudest voice in the room. So
Control.
the next would be
the next air.
Libra.
Libra. Okay.
Beautiful.
Beauty.
Beautiful people.
Beauty is a necessity.
A lot of actors, actresses have Libra rising.
That makes sense. They know all the social niceties. They know what to say. They know how to get this or get that. They know how to get their needs met. Very charming, very diplomatic. Know how to speak correctly. I wouldn't say the hardest workers, but whenever actors, no, that's not true. Actors work really.
I don't know if you think you can gauge work ethic from just the ascendant.
That's true.
It's a little too superficial.
But we want to think, sometimes people want to think, then I would have to say Taurus risings are also a little lazy because of the influence of Venus.
Perhaps. Right? It really depends on other chart factors and connections.
The level of obsession or need for beauty, maybe. With Venus ruling the ascendant, right? Unless there's another planet right on it. Both with Libra and Taurus. Libra needs partnership. It needs the other, right? Relating is the big theme of Libra. Needing to be in partnership, maybe continuously, always seeking out partnerships. Once they have a partnership, once it's over, seek the next one right away. I would imagine, the importance of partnership. The last air, unless you want to add anything, would be Aquarius. Aquarius traditionally ruled by Saturn, and also ruled by Uranus, sub-ruler.
More modern
interpretation. What do you think? You tell me about Aquarius and the ascendant.
It's one I've seen a lot in readings, and the common theme I see with Aquarius rising is people that have never really felt like they fit in. Like they've never, and that could have been, like you said, from an early age of just being kind of, I don't want to say outcast, I don't want to use that strong of a term, but just having something a little different, or even taking on a kind of different viewpoint, or being in situations even where they're the like odd person out, I would say. I've noticed that. Like, I'm trying to give an example of an anonymous chart where it was like they had Aquarius rising, and they were constantly like this person in the office, or like the only male in the office, or they'd be that like kind of singleton. And I think that has to do a lot with Aquarius being this disruptor, out of the box, nonconformist energy. It kind of makes sense that people who have Aquarian rising might have like something unique about even the way they look. And it could be intentional. It could be they like style their hair in a crazy way, or like have piercings, or do things that are like not status quo as a way of, adorning their mask.
It is the mask. Abruptness. I find abruptness sometimes. The speech is almost staccato. It's almost, there's not a harmonious flow to how they talk. It's more so that their energy, as it comes out, as it manifests into their voice and communication, it can be abrupt, can throw people off guard, can be a little shocking. All Uranus features.
I would say I've noticed too, with personal Aquarius rising experience, there can be like even a removed or detached aura to them where they're not very present, and it's kind of hard to really read them or connect, because it's like there is this like kind of like cerebral detachment that they're like kind of maybe in their own mind, in their own little world.
Oh, a good add there. It's very true with Aquarian energy. it can always retire into that kind of disassociative avoidance of dealing with physical, emotional, dirty reality. Um, yeah, that was great insight.
I guess I didn't do a health tip for the others, but Earth risings, at least in medical astrology, are seen as a very strong constitution. But with air, I might add that like grounding or embodiment practices could be very beneficial for
Somatic
people with
practices.
air rising.
Yeah, grounding to the earth, putting your bare feet on the ground. You're an Aquarius rising, right? Making sure you're grounding the electricity that's flowing through your Uranus rule chart.
But any of the airs, I would say, any sort of embodiment practices could be beneficial.
Got it.
On a health level.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's go now to the spiritual fire. Ascendant. Yeah.
Aries, right?
Aries, yeah.
I've noticed with Aries rising, they tend to look very young.
Oh yeah, Aries energy, Aries and Gemini energy usually.
Very like spriteful, youthful, and it's not even necessarily like their face is young, but it's that is the case a lot of the time. But they age really well. I think Paul Rudd, everyone jokes, see how he's an actor. Everyone's like shows pictures of him 20 years ago and now, and he looks exactly the same. He's Aries rising. Even with Aries suns, I kind of noticed that, but there is this like youthful energy, enigmatic like energy to Aries that come, especially in a rising sign, like they just have that like joie de vivre, youthful, playful, vigor. Yeah, that's a great word for it, vigor.
I think there's a distinct difference between the feminine and male in terms of how it manifests.
No comment.
But I won't make any comments.
We'll leave our personal prejudices out of Uranian Streams.
The next fire would be Leo.
Maybe one more thing to add to the Aries, because we kind of just glossed. I talked really more on a superficial level, but I would say Aries rising, there is a quickness in the way they kind of navigate. Maybe even like a spontaneity in the way that they kind of go about things in their life. Like, I'll just try everything just to try it, or, kind of life short attitude.
Almost like a 3-5, just banging into life.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Needing the experiences, not to think so quickly. There's always the leadership quality in Aries, right? Where Aries is, it's going to think quickly. We're going to do this. The decision is made. Instinctually quickly. The next would be Leo. The oven of Leo. And
Leo rising. How's my hair?
That's Leo rising right there. How's my hair? How am I looking? I'm the star. I'm the sun. I shine for you all. And it can be hard for a Leo rising, I think. When it's not the star. Once it realizes maybe that another brother or another sister is coming into the family, can be very tough. Oh, I'm not the only star here. The light's not just on me. I think it's the sun, right? Where's the sun in the chart? The sun is going to be the ruler. And Leo needs to have its own show. So what happens when no one shows up anymore? It's not a very nice way of looking at it. I think Leos, in a sense, go. Why am I beating up on Leo risings?
Yeah, I don't know who this is.
Leo risings are great. Like,
I think there's a definite warmth to that rising.
Yes.
It was very warm, nurturing, loyal vibe from folks with Leo rising.
I'm thinking of a teacher of mine who is a Leo rising.
Entertaining.
He did some amazing performances in his life, and he's still doing to this day. Now he's writing fantasy. Maybe we'll have him on the show.
Oh yeah, we're gonna try to interview people.
And there is, as Molly mentioned, there is a heartfelt quality to Leo risings.
Yeah.
And with my Venus in Leo, I feel that, and I really enjoy that. But that there's a youthful kind of child mirthful quality, and it just really touches the heart. And and so the way that flame burns, and Leo is really, really nice, really warming to the hearts of others.
Yeah, a radiating kind of energy. Then that brings us to
The quick fire
Sag.
of the Sag ascendant. Sag ascendant, my brother's a Sag ascendant. I think the Archer is really strong as an ascendant. I mean, I think the way that they take hold of life is with a certain optimism, a certain vigor themselves being fire.
Ideals that they really hold true to.
I think the only tension would be maybe when those ideals don't meet reality. There might be some disappointment that they may feel or experience.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
or perhaps even taken advantage of, I could see.
Yeah, there could
Same
be
with
some
water.
naivete.
Same with some of like the Cancer rising or Pisces rising, or some of the more empathetic risings. I would argue could even be more like preyed upon, perhaps.
I would say in terms of the modalities, the mutables could be
more inclined to get like wrapped into situations where people may take advantage of their adaptability or generosity. But Sag, it could be the case that they're I don't want to say it's like naivete, but their idealism could maybe be perhaps manipulated or taken advantage of. That's all I would add.
Sure. Almost like a Taurus ascendant in the sense of very, very slow to get what's going on if there's any deception. So there could be,
because his glass is always half full.
Yeah, it's always positive. It's always, oh, everything's gonna be great.
And in a work environment, I can see people just being like, just give it to that person. They'll handle it. Being maybe like
more energy to begin or complete an endeavor.
It's interesting to think about the rising signs as like, how different rising signs would be like perceived in a job interview or something, because I feel like the rising sign is kind of like that first impression job interview, like 10-minute impression you give people. And as you get to know someone, obviously over days, weeks, months, they say it takes 6 months like really get to know someone. You see, I guess more of their sun revealed or other aspects in their chart, but the rising is really that initial judgment almost that gets cast upon a person. So it is interesting to connect with your rising and understand the impression you might be projecting out into the world, whether you know it or not.
Initially, when I spoke about the Scorpio ascendant, I spoke about mastering, your ascendant. And there's something to that in understanding what your childhood dynamic is, I think. Because your childhood dynamic is going to be how your ascendant really interacted, at least initially. I mean, some would argue that the moon is the most powerful in the initial first 10, 20 years of life, being the instinctual emotional response. And I would say a close second would be the ascendant. And that's how kind of life hits us. So looking at your childhood and looking, what was your childhood like? I mean, if you're the Scorpio ascendant, did you indeed have, were you living under the shadow of a parent who was very challenging and difficult? Were you frustrated by people's attempt to control you or tell you what to do if you're a Taurus ascendant?
That's interesting.
Looking at the child through the ascendant is something I like to do in the chart to get a sense of what they're working through in this lifetime.
Or like a Cancer ascendant, like having to be that nurturer role within a family from like a young age, having to maybe take on the emotional residue of everyone in that family system.
Yes. I would even argue that would be the same for the IC. Cancer ruling the IC, right? Family, home. I would argue that too. Okay, anything else?
Anything to add about our Sag rising? Did we feel like we completed that thought?
I think so. Okay. I think I think we did.
Write to us if any lingering ascendant or other astrology questions have been piqued because of this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.